Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Unit 5, Day 7. In today's lesson, we are learning to find the volume of cylinders and cones, all right? And so to start us off, just the basic definition of volume. The volume is the amount of three-dimensional space something takes up, right? And so when we're thinking about volume, we're thinking about taking some three-dimensional figure and filling it up, right? And so in this case, we have a cylinder. Think, a can of soup, maybe. And then for a cone, ice cream cone is the classic example, thinking about filling up the ice cream cone. So before I get into the talking about the formulas, I want you to do this. I want you to look at the formula for cylinder, and then I want you to look at the formula for a cone, and I want you to do two things. I want you to put a rectangle around the parts that are different, and I want you to put a circle around the parts that are the same. And then from there, I want you to answer this question based on the formulas. What do you notice about the relationship between a cone and a cylinder? So I want you to pause it, and I want you to reflect on that right now. Okay, so again, we're going to circle the parts that are the same. So this part and this part are the exact same in the formula. Okay. What is different in the formula? Well, it is simply the fact that the cone has a 1/3. And so the answer to this question, what we notice that's different about the relationship is that a cone is 1/3 of a cylinder. So that is the relationship. Okay, so it would take 3 of these cones to fill up the inside of a cylinder with the same dimensions, with the same height and the same radius. Okay. The only other thing I want to point out before we get started is, guys, I really need you to understand that when you go to apply these formulas, the formula sheet, not only does it give you the formula, which is huge, right? Growing up, I had to memorize these formulas. You don't. You have a formula sheet. But in addition to that, it even shows you, right? So in this part, I have the radius. Well, the radius is labeled there. So please make sure you pay attention to that, right? Then we got the height. Well, if I forget what the height is also labeled, okay? So I think that's really important. If I were you, maybe even in your notes right now, just highlight or take a colored pencil and draw, just pointing out the different parts because that's going to be important, because all you're going to need to remember to do is to take the information and plug it into the formula, okay? So let's get into a couple examples. What I will say is the steps for solving these are the exact same steps that I gave you last time in the previous lesson for solving surface area and volume of square-based pyramids. So here's the steps. First, we're going to decide which formula to use. Okay, so we first decide. Then we are going to identify the information. So we decide what formula to use, then we identify, then we're going to substitute it in for our variables, and then we're going to answer the question just by evaluating it, all right? And to evaluate it, we can use the Desmos calculator to do the work for us, all right? So this question, we are looking for the volume of this cone, right? So the volume of the cone, I'm going to start by identifying what's the formula. Okay, so what is the formula for volume of a cone? Well, it is 1/3 pi r squared times the height. Okay, so that's the formula that we're going to use. Okay, and then so in this formula, I need the radius, I need the height, and I don't need the slant height. Okay, so the slant height is provided, but that's extra information that I don't need. Okay, So now I'm going to identify. Well, guys, this part is super important, okay? We need the radius. And as I pointed out, right, the radius goes from the outside of the circle to the middle, okay? Well, in this example, it goes from the outside all the way to the other side, okay, through the middle. That is a diameter. And so I need the radius. And so it's going to be super important that I pay close attention to identifying the radius. And so because I have the diameter here, I need just half. I need to cut that in half. So half of 11, so I just divide that by 2, and that is going to give me 5.5 as my radius. Okay, and so my radius, because I had the diameter, is 5.5. All right, and then I got to identify my height. Well, is it this diagonal or is it straight up and down? Again, remember, height is when you are standing straight up and down. All right, so the height is 8 centimeters. And then, friends, once I have determined it, I just substitute it in. I'm going to plug it in over here to my Desmos. I've already set this in. But again, I want you to see, you can just type the formula in and then tell it what R equals and then tell it what H equals. Now, I want you to notice, normally you would not have both of the formulas here. I just have them both typed in. That way I don't have to type them in and I can get through the video quicker. All right, so radius is 5.5, the height is 8, and when I do that, got to make sure I look at the right formula. Again, it's the 1/3 because I'm dealing with a cone. So my volume would be 46 point, and we'll just round that to 0.8. We'll round it to the nearest 100. You can round it to the nearest 10, depending on what the question says. And that's it. All right, guys, those steps right there is simply what we're going to be doing for all of them. All right, so identify the formula. Find which formula you were using, identify the dimensions of each, the height and the radius, and then substitute it in, and that gives me my answer. All right, so let's look at, you know what, here's where you go. All right, so I want you to pause it. I want you to do this next, find the volume of this next cone on your own, and then we'll take a look at a cylinder, and then that'll be our time. All right, so volume, the formula for the volume of a cone is 1/3 pi r squared times the height. I want you to make sure that you write the formula down every single time, okay? Don't skip that step, all right? And then I want to identify, well, the radius goes from the middle to the outside. So my radius is 3. I don't have to cut it in half this time because I actually have the radius. The only reason I would cut it in half is if I had the diameter, and that would have been 6. Then I would have needed to cut it in half. So make sure that you understand, again, what you are given. Then the height is 10, okay? And I do not need the slant height, all right? So I'm going to go over here to Desmos. I'm going to tell it that the radius is 3, the height is 10, and then, again, I'm going to use this formula here, and it is 31.42 is my volume, all right? All right, guys. I'm going to do one cylinder, even though I know I don't necessarily need to, right? But I want to show you at least one example of this, and then I'll let you do the other ones on your own, all right? So find the volume of the cylinder, okay? Well, we start by identifying the formula, decide which formula we need, all right? For the cylinder, it is volume equals pi r squared times the height, okay? So pi r squared times the height. And then I'm going to identify what each of the variables are. So I need I need R, I need H, and I don't need the slant height here. Okay, so the radius, again, is 7, all right, because radius goes from the outside to the middle, and it stops at the middle, okay? And then the height is 13. And I've identified all of what I need, okay? And so then I can solve it, all right? My radius is 7. My height is 13. I'm gonna plug it in. 2,000, again, and I'm looking at this formula here, right? Because this is the cylinder. 2001.19, all right, in 1900s, okay? All right, guys, and so, again, this is it, all right? That is pretty much all you're gonna need to do for the remainder of these, okay? So, hey, I want you to just finish the rest of the sheet, all right? And so after you have finished, practicing these examples, if you're here in class, raise your hand and I'll come and check your work. And then after that, we will just continue practicing. Hey, in this lesson, we've learned how to determine the volume and the volume of a cylinder and a cone, all right? And again, I want to just point out as I end, the main thing that we got to pay attention to is, did the problem give me the diameter or did it give me the radius, okay? And if it gave me the diameter, then I need to cut the diameter in half to get the radius, okay? So we really want to pay attention to that. That's the only way you can get one of these problems wrong, I believe, right? So make sure you don't cut any corners. Make sure you write all the information down. And hey, as always, dude, show your work, bro. All right. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Like, subscribe, do all the things. Peace.